Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Bronte and today I'm going to be showing you how I make this halter top. This is what it looks like. It's made up of moss stitches and I love this stitch. It's really easy and beginner friendly and I feel like it really molds to your body, which is what I wanted. I actually copied this top from this top, if that makes sense, and then I kind of just created a pattern out of it so I could come back to it if I wanted to make another one. I really like this top because it's not see-through and it's really supportive if you have a bigger chest like me. And yeah, I've been wearing this out in public and I feel very comfortable in it and I feel like it just looks really good. So I'm so excited to share this, but yeah, let's get straight into the tutorial. Okay, so for the materials, I'm going to be using 100 grams of this 4 Seasons Flinders yarn. I've just got two 50-gram balls here. I'm going to be using a 4mm hook, scissors, yarn needle, and I've got 4 stitch markers, 2 of each colour. So to start off, what we're going to do is make a slip knot. So I'm going to show you how I do mine. You can do it whatever way you prefer. But what I do is I'll put the end over my 2 fingers and then I'm going to grab this yarn and twist and then pull through this piece and then leave a long end so we can weave that in later. And what I'm going to do is chain any even number, and you want it to wrap around your ribcage and have a 4 to 5 inch gap at the back. So I'm going to chain 120 and then try it on and see if I like it. So to start my chaining, what I usually like to do is wrap the yarn around my finger like this to keep the tension, and then I'll just put the yarn over my hook, pull through, wrap my yarn, pull through, and you can see as I'm pulling it through, I'm twisting my hook under and through that loop just so it gets through nice and easy like that. And then I can start to pick up the pace a little bit because I have the tension on my yarn. So I'm just going to continue with this until I get to 120 and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I finished my 120 chains and I'm just going to show you where the top is going to start. So I'm going to start down the bottom. So if you want to make it a bit longer, you can go down here, but I want mine to sit kind of where this top is sitting. So I'm just going to wrap it around here and then I'll turn around and show you. I've got about 2 or 3 inches at the back. So that's how much I want to leave. And then I'm just going to make sure it will fit around my chest area as well. So you can see there's a bit of a gap there as well, which is good. So yeah, just try it on and see if you like it. You can chain less if you want more of an open back, but I want mine to be a little bit more supportive. So yeah, I wanted to make sure this part around here will be a nice distance apart, just so it can be a bit more supportive. But yeah, do as many chains as you want to do, just make sure it's an even number. So for the next step, what I'm going to do is chain one more on top of my 120 chains, and then I'm going to skip these 2 chains, so this one and this one, and I'm going to do a single crochet into the 3rd chain. So I'm going to put my hook through there and then wrap my yarn, pull through that loop, and I've got 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops, and then I'm going to chain 1, skip this next stitch and do another single crochet, so putting my hook through, yarning over, pull through that loop, and then I'm going to pull through 2 loops, chain 1, skip that next stitch, go into that one with a single crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, go into that one, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet, chain 1. So pretty much going to do this up all of the chains. So yeah, I'll meet you back when I'm at the end of this row. So I'm coming up to my last few stitches now. I'll just finish those ones. There we go. So that's what our first row should be looking like so far, if you can see that. So now we're going to work the next row. So to start the next row, we're going to chain 2. So this chain will count as our first single crochet and this chain will count as the gap between the single crochets. So what I'm going to do is turn my work now and we're going to find the gap between those 2 single crochets. So you can see here there's a gap in there, so I'm going to do a single crochet into that, chain 1, and then I'm going to go into the next gap. So there's that single crochet and that one, and then there's the chain 1 space in the middle. I'm going to go into that gap there, single crochet, chain 1, and then going into the next gap and chain 1, then finding the next gap, chain 1. So I'm going to continue doing this until I get to the end of the row, and I will show you how to end this row because it's a little bit different than this part in the middle here. So I'm coming up to my last couple stitches. I'm going to work into this one, and then we've got one more stitch, and it's a little bit different on this last stitch. So there's this loop here and this loop here, and those are the single crochets, like the little V, and you just want to go in the gap behind where we did our 2 chains. So you can see I made a little gap there, and we just want to go into that gap like that, pull through, and then a single crochet. So we're going to do that at the end of every row. I'm going to chain 2 again to start my next row. So I'm not going to count this chain as a row, but we've done 2 rows and we're up to our 3rd now, and you just want to make sure you keep track of how many rows you've done, because when we get to the top it gets a little bit more complicated. So what I usually like to do is just write the rows down. So I just do R for the row, and I'll just write that and just keep track of how many rows we have. So I'm just going to tick that one and that one, and we're up to our 3rd now. Or you can also use an app that tracks it, but I can't be bothered, so I just use a piece of paper because it's a bit easier. But yeah, so we're up to row 3 now, and we've done our 2 chains. I'm going to go into that gap again in between those 2, single crochet, chain 1, going into the gap. But yeah, if you're struggling to find where the gap is, what you can do is look at the single crochets. So you can see there's a V there and a V there, and there's like a chain 1 space just in the middle between them. So you just want to make sure you go under that chain 1 space, and always make sure you chain, because it'll make it really hard to get into that stitch if you forgot to do the chain. So just make sure you do that chain 1. I'm going to continue until I get to the end, and I'll show you one more time how to finish off the rows. So I'm just doing my last single crochet, and I'm just going to go into this gap here, that chain 2 gap there, and I'm going to do a single crochet. And this is what it should be looking like. You can see this side is nice and straight, which is what we want. So I'm going to chain 2 to start row 4, turn my work, and then just go into those gaps with single crochets and then chaining 1. And I'm just going to continue along at the end of this row. So what I'm going to do is just continue until I have 42 rows. So yeah, I would definitely recommend using something to track your rows. So I've just written down all my rows here. I'm just going to tick them off as I go. But yeah, you can definitely use something on your phone, or you can use your notes app, or whatever is best for you. But yeah, just make sure you keep track of your rows, because with the moss stitch sometimes it can be hard to count the rows. But yeah, I'm going to continue until I've got 42 rows, and I'll come back and show you the next step. So it's been a couple days and I've been working on my panel, and I've got 42 rows of the moss stitch, as you can see right here. And now what we're going to do is mark out our straps. So I'm going to put my top on, and this is the top that I use as my template. If you have something similar that you want to copy, you can grab that out as well. This one's just from cotton on this top, but what you can do, even if you don't have a top, it's fine. What you're going to do is just put your top on and then mark out 2 spots right near your armpits. So I'm just going to put my fingers where I want the straps to be. So we're going to go on the outer edge, so right near your armpit. So I'm just going to get my stitch marker. You can use a bobby pin as well, it doesn't really matter too much. I'm just going to mark this spot out. If you chain more at the beginning, you'll probably have a different distance from here to here, if that makes sense. So yeah, just put the stitch markers wherever you want, and I want mine to go quite wide and then work up like this. So that's where I have my stitch markers, you can see there. And now what I'm going to do is just count them and make sure they're both even on both sides, and then we'll move on to actually making the strap. So I've got the stitch markers in the places I put them when I tried up this panel against my chest, and I'm just quickly going to count in to make sure they're even. So what I'm going to do is count between the gaps. So you can see here, this is our first gap, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13. So it's in the 13th gap, and then I'll count this side in the gaps. This one's also in the 13th gap, so I'm going to leave them both there. If you had one that was, say, like 13, the other one was at 15, I would probably move it back to 13 on the other side, and then just try it up against your chest again to see if you like it. And if you want to move it either out or in, you can, depending on where it sits on your body. What I've done is flip my work over, so we ended over here, so we're going to be working this way. But what we're going to do is attach our yarn to this gap where the stitch marker is. So I'm just going to make a slip knot. And what I'm going to do is put my hook through this gap where the stitch marker is. And then just put my slip knot on my hook. And I'm just going to pull through, chain 2. This first chain will count as a single crochet, and the second chain will count as the gap between the single crochets. Next thing we're going to do is work into the next stitch with a single crochet, and just work the moss stitch along this row until you get to this stitch marker over here. So I'll meet you back when I get to that stitch marker. So I'm just coming up to the end of this row. I'm just gonna do my last single crochet in the gap where the stitch marker is. So for the next row, we're going to be decreasing, and I'll show you how to do that. So what I'm gonna do is chain 2 to start my next row. I'm just gonna turn my work. So we're going to be decreasing on this row. So what we're gonna do is skip this first stitch here, so this gap, and we're gonna go into this gap here. So skip this gap and going into this gap with a single crochet. And then we're going to work the rest of this row like normal until we get to the second last stitch. So I'm coming up to the end here, and you can see I have 2 stitches left, 1 stitch here, and then 1 stitch between this the chain 2 and then that last single crochet. So what I'm going to do is just skip this one and go into this last gap. So I'm going to go between the single crochet and the chain 2. So I'm going to do a single crochet in there. And you might be worried about the gaps, but on my last top I did this for all the decreases, and it turned out fine. I couldn't really see any big gaps, so don't worry about that too much. So that was our second row, and we're going to do 5 rows, decreasing every second row. So the next row we won't be decreasing, so that'll be our 3rd row, and then on the 4th we'll be decreasing like we did on this row, and then the 5th will just be a normal row. But I'll just take you through the next decreasing row, but this row is just going to be working into every stitch, so we don't need to worry about doing any decreasing in this row. So yeah, I'll meet you back at the end when I'm finished this row, and then we'll do our next row with the decreases. So I'm just coming up to the end of my 3rd row. I'm just working over and working into that last stitch between the single crochet and the chain 2. So now we're up to row 4, and what we're going to do is decrease again. So I'm going to start with a chain 2, and then I'm going to skip this first stitch and go into the second one with a single crochet, and then pretty much just work the moss stitch until I have 2 stitches left, skip the second last stitch, and then go into the last stitch. So I have 2 stitches left, this one here and then this one here. I'm going to go into this last one, so I'm going to skip this one and then go into this last one with a single crochet. Perfect. So you can start to see it's starting to curve in a little bit, which is what we want. And we've got one more row on this section, so we're going to do one more row without any decreases. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Always start your rows with a chain 2 if you haven't noticed so far. And yeah, I'm just going to work into every stitch along this row, no decreases. So I'll meet you back when I'm finished this row. So I've just finished that last row and we have a total of 47 rows now. What we're going to do for the next row is we're going to mark out the inner side of the straps. So I'm going to count 12 gaps in, and I'll just show you how to do that now. You probably learnt from this section before, but I'm going to count 12. So this is our first one. 1, 2, 11, 12. So I'm just going to mark the 12th gap with a stitch marker. And preferably if you have different colors, that would be better, but if you don't worry about it. It just kind of shows the outer side and the inner side of the straps, if that makes sense. I'm going to count for the other side now too. So 1. So I'm going to mark this 12th gap and put my stitch marker in there. So I just wanted to add something in as a note. So I'm going to stop counting from these previous rows. I'm just going to count from row 1 for the straps and upwards. So this will be our first row, because I think counting from 47 up is just going to get too confusing. So I thought it would be easier for you guys to understand. So I've just changed it. So we're just going to count from row 1 for both these straps. So for row 1, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, turn our work. We're going to decrease, so we're going to skip this first stitch and then go into the second stitch. And then work along until we have 2 stitches left, and then we're going to decrease on the other side. So we've got 2 stitches left, so I've got this one and then this one, and we're going to skip this and then go into the last stitch. For row 2, we're going to turn our work and work into every stitch, so just working into each one along this row. So by the end of this second row, you should have 10 single crochets, and I'm not counting this chain 2, so just counting these. And yeah, just keep counting your single crochets to make sure you're up to the right point. But for row 3, we're going to decrease again. So we're going to skip this one and then go into this one. And then just working until we have 2 stitches left. So I've got 2 stitches left, this one here and then this last one. So I'm going to skip this one and go into this last little gap between the single crochet and the chain 2. So you should have 8 single crochets by the end of this round. So now I'm going to move on to row 4, and I'm not going to do any decreases on this row, so just working normally. But yeah, if you can tell so far, there's a bit of a pattern. So every odd row is a decrease and every even row is not a decrease, if that makes sense. Should have 8 single crochets on row 4. Now we're moving on to row 5, and we're going to decrease on the second and second last stitch. So skipping this one, going into that next one, working up until you have 2 stitches left. So I'm just going to skip this one and then work into that last gap there. So you should have 6 single crochets now, and we are up to row 6 now, so no decreases. So for row 7, what we're going to do is we're going to do a decrease on this side, so on this inner side here. So we're going to work like normal into this first stitch here, and then when we get to the second last one, we'll do a decrease. So we're going to skip this one and go into that last one. that's row 7, and we should have 5 single crochet stitches. And now we're up to row 8, and we're not going to do any decreases, so just working into each stitch like normal. Now we're up to row 9, and we're going to decrease again on this inner side here. So we're going to be left with 4 stitches. So I'm going to work into this 2, 3, and then skipping this one and going into that last one. That's 4. And for row 10, we're not going to do any decreases, just going to work into each stitch. So we should have 4 by now. So just finished row 10, got 4 single crochets. For row 11, we're going to do 1 more decrease, so we're going to end up with 3 single crochets. So we're not decreasing on this side, we're only decreasing on this inner side. Just going to work into the first 2 stitches, and then we have 1 stitch and then the last. So I'm going to skip this one and go into this last gap here. Single crochet. So now we have 3 stitches. For row 12, I'm just going to work into each stitch. So what I'm going to do is do 45 rows doing the 3 single crochets across, and after the 45th row I'm going to decrease down to 2 single crochets and then do another 4 rows of that. So I'll meet you back when I've done my 45 rows, and then I'll show you how to decrease again into the 2 stitches. Something else I just wanted to note as well when you're doing this is to not skip that last stitch. So you want to make sure you've got 3 single crochets in each one. But this last stitch, as you can see here, it's quite hidden, but you just want to make sure you go after that single crochet and just push your hook into that gap there. So you can kind of see I've created a gap for myself to go into there. But yeah, you just want to make sure you keep it even along both sides for the strap, because you don't want it to look too wonky. Just finished my 45th row, and what I'm going to do now is just decrease down to 2 stitches. So I'm just going to do the same thing we've done before and just skip this one and go into this one, and then just go into this one here. So I've got 2 single crochets. You can see there's like an angle there. I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and then I'm just going to work into this one, and then just work into this one. So I'm going to do 5 rows of the 2 single crochet decrease. So that was my second one, and I'm going to do 3 more just to finish off this strap. So I'm actually going to do 10 rows because I've just measured it up and it doesn't look like it'll be long enough. So instead of doing 5 rows of these, I'm going to do 5 more just to give it that length. And yeah, if you need to do that as well, you can. But if you're happy with that length, you can just stop there. But I'm just going to do 5 more because I think I might need it. So I'll just meet you when I finish these rows. So to finish off the straps, what I'm going to do is chain 2 and then just pull it nice and tight, and then pull through a long loop like this, and then cut it with my scissors. And that is our first strap done. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing for this strap. So now I'm going to start on the next strap. So to start off the next one, I'm going to do a slip knot, and then I'm just going to put my hook through this gap here. So you can see there's a chain 2 here and then a single crochet, and I'm going to put my hook between those, and then I'm just going to put my slip knot on my hook and then pull through. And then I'm going to chain 2, it counts as the first stitch. And then what I'm going to do is pretty much just do the exact same thing we did on this side. So on the first row, what we did was decreased in this first stitch, so we skipped the first stitch. If you need to go rewatch this section of this strap, you can do that. But what I'm going to do is just go ahead and finish this strap, and I'll meet you back for the next step. So both straps are done, and I actually ended up adding a couple more rows onto my straps. I added about 10 extra rows just because it didn't have enough length. So if you need to do that as well, you can. I'm going to take out my stitch markers now because we don't need them anymore. So what we're going to do next is create a border on each side so we can use it as a tie up at the back. So we're going to work from the bottom up and then create holes so we can use them to tie up the back of the top. So what I'm going to do now is create a slip knot. And what I'm going to do is just put my hook into the bottom stitch here. And then just pull through and then chain one. And we're going to work single crochets along this side here. And make sure you count how many you have because we're going to do the exact same on the other side. So I'm going to start now. That's 1. And then just going into the gaps, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter too much where you go, just make sure each stitch is evenly spaced apart. So I've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 40, 41, and I've got 42 single crochets along this side here. So what we're going to do now is create holes in this part so we can pull our back straps into those. So what I'm going to do is chain 1, turn my work, and I'm going to work into this first stitch with a single crochet, and then I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to skip these 2 stitches and go into the third. So that creates a bit of a hole there. Now I'm going to do 10 more stitches. So that's our first one. That's our second, third, 4, 9, and then 10. I'm going to chain 2 again and then skip those 2 and go into the third. That's 1, 2, 9, 10, and then I'm going to chain another 2, skip the next 2, go into the third, and then do another 10, 8, 9, 10, and then I'm going to chain 2 more, skip the next 2, and then single crochet into the third, and then I've got 2 more stitches, so I'm just going to work into those 2 to finish off this row, just like that. And then I'm just going to chain 2 to fasten off, pull through a long loop, and then just cut my yarn. So what we did there was we did 1 single crochet, then we did a hole, 10 single crochets, another hole, another 10 single crochets, another hole, and then 10 more, and then another hole. So we've got 4 holes in total, and then we're going to do the exact same on the other side. So I started with 42 stitches on this side, so I'm going to do 42 single crochets along this as well, and then make 4 holes with 10 single crochets in between them. So if you have a different stitch count, it doesn't really matter, just make sure your holes are even. So you could either do 12 between the holes, or you could do more or less, whatever suits you, but just make sure you've got 1 at the top and then maybe 2 or 3 at the bottom like I did. So I'm going to go ahead and do my next one and just make sure I've got the exact same stitch count as I did on the other side. I'll meet you back when I finish doing this side. This is what it should be looking like now. I've got my 4 holes on each side, and now we're going to do the back strap. So what I'm going to do now is actually double up my yarn. So if you pulled from the middle of the ball, then you can actually just get both ends. There should be 1 inside the ball and then 1 on the outside of the ball. And what I'm going to do, so I don't have to measure it out, is just get both of those strands, make a slip knot, and then I'm going to start chaining like this. And I'm going to chain around 300, and then I'm going to put it in my top and see if it's long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 300. So I've just finished chaining 300 and it's nice and long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain one and pull through a long loop, and I'm just going to cut these two. And now I'm going to thread it through my top. So I'm going to put one side through a hole. I'm just going to fold it in half so I can push it through nice and easy, like that. I'm going to leave about half on the other side, and then I'm just going to go through the top and then push it through underneath. So make sure you do that on each side so it looks the same. So get my third hole on this side. I'm going to push it through like that. And then I've got one more hole at the bottom, so I'm going to go like that and then pull through. And now I'm going to do the same on this side. So I'm just going to push this through from the top to the bottom, and then go into this one, pull it through. Just make sure you pull it out and keep everything nice and even. And then I'm just going to go into this gap there, pull it nice and loose, what it should look like at the back. And I've got two ends so I can tie it up into a bow. But yeah, so that's pretty much what the top looks like, and I'm going to weave in the ends now. We have a few clumped together, so what I'm going to do is actually just tie a knot with the ends that are close together, do a double knot, and then I'm going to get my stitch marker. That's what my one looks like. And then I'm just going to weave in the ends, pulling that through the needle, and I'm just going to go into any stitch. These ones are quite tight because they were the single crochets. Just going to push it through like that, if I can get it. There we go. Doesn't really matter where you go, just go a few different directions to make sure it's nice and secure. Go into here, and then I'm just going to cut that off right there, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in all my loose ends, and I'll meet you back when I'm finished, and I'll show you what the top looks like. Try it on. So this is what the top looks like on. It's such a good fit. This is what the back looks like. But yeah, it fits really well, feels really supportive. It's a bit shorter than I would have liked, but I'm still happy with the result. It's a perfect little summer top, and yeah, it fits so well, so comfy. I love this color as well. How pretty is it? And all the stitches look so nice. It's not see-through, so you don't have to wear any nipple covers or a bra or anything like that. But yeah, the back is really cute too. I love the crisscross. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you guys liked it. Comment down below what you guys want to see next, and give this a like if you enjoyed my tutorial. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.